Europe is having their worst refugee crisis since World War II, I believe. And, you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words, especially in a society that doesn't read, except for this audience, Sal. That's why we get the great authors here. These are readers. But this picture was all around the world, and I think everybody in the Western world saw it, and it is heartbreaking, and I think everyone, probably even on the right, agrees that we have to do something for the immediate to help these poor people who are so desperate. The knottier question that I noticed the rest of the media avoids is, what about the long term? I mean, I so understand why moderate Muslims are fleeing their homelands, but the answer can't really be that we empty out the Middle East of all the moderates and leave it to ISIS and the extremists. If they just come to moderate, tolerant Europe, to someday make it less moderate and tolerant, that isn't the answer, right?
Absolutely not. And in fact, the real problem is it's a demographic time bomb. Europeans, historical Europeans, are not having babies anymore. And so the only people who are having babies in countries like France and Germany and England are the new Muslim immigrants. And so what it is doing is having a huge demographic change. And that's giving rise to a backlash. You've got very right-wing nationalist parties in France, in the Netherlands, and you've got it, you know, it's going to end up being, I think, a political upheaval. You're going to have a terrible backlash towards this. And of course, you know, you want to be kind. You want to bring people in. I think it's great that President Obama decided that he's going to bring in, you know, more Syrians into the United States, you know, 6 times more than we have over the last 2 years. He's going to bring in over the next year. I think that's great. But we do a good job of assimilating people here in the United States. Europe does a terrible job. The Muslims who go to France, the 8% of the population there, they don't melt in. It didn't happen. Places like Birmingham are concentrated Muslim communities. They haven't moved in. They haven't integrated. And a lot of the problem is the Europeans themselves.
To the political point, the backlash has already begun. I mean, in Sweden now, there was a poll recently that the biggest party in the country is the Sweden Democrats. When I lived in Sweden 10 years ago, they were 2%. It would be an absolute fantasy that these guys would ever get in power. They are based from a Nazi party. They came out of a Nazi party in the 1990s. They're the biggest party in tolerant Sweden. Denmark is not allowing refugees in, and they're pushing them towards Sweden, and they're actually taking out ads in newspapers in Lebanon saying, don't come to Denmark, because the Danish People's Party, which is the far-right party there, controls the balance of power there, and they're also the biggest party. Imagine that. In Sweden and Denmark, the two biggest parties are extreme right parties, and this is a response to immigration.
Well, let me try and say something maybe a little you might not expect me to say. First of all, I think that the solution to the problem is not taking in refugees. The solution to the problem is to fix the reason the refugees are fleeing. That's it. You've got this unending war in Syria. Right. Also, you have, you know, Eritrea, Ethiopia. That's where they're all coming from, because they're running for their lives. You know, and the way to stop them running for their lives is to stop putting their lives in danger where they live. One thing. Second thing is, I do think it's very weird that the countries where they share a language and a culture are the ones not letting them in. That's to say, the Gulf states.
But we've taken zero people. 5 Gulf states.
My illustrious namesake, King Salman, I think that's the wrong way round, isn't it? It should be, I mean,
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, King Salman arrives in D.C. to talk to the administration, and he takes over an entire 5-star hotel for himself. But he will not let in a single refugee into his country.
And these are Arab, you know, and it's not just Saudi Arabia, it's all the Gulf states, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, none, they will not let a single one in. And of course, these are Arabic-speaking people who you would think would fit in a little better there than, say, Dusseldorf.
Well, that's right, but